Welcome. My name is Natasha Sherman, and I am your host. I have two guests today. My first guest is Jeffrey Deskovic. He's been with us before. In 1990, Jeff, at the age of 17, was wrongfully convicted of rape and murder, and he spent the next 16 years in prison. He was one of the, quote, lucky ones who was exonerated and released from prison after 16 years. Authorities knew his DNA did not match that of the actual perpetrator, who 3 years later went on to murder another young woman and mother of two. But rogue police officers, prosecutors, and other law enforcement personnel knowingly and maliciously accused, prosecuted, and eventually secured his conviction. Jeffrey is now in law school, and he started the Jeffrey Deskovic Foundation for Justice, which is committed to fighting wrongful conviction through raising awareness, seeking legislative changes, exonerating the wrongfully convicted, both in DNA and non-DNA cases, and to the reintegration of exonerees. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me here. Always so warm to be interviewed by you.
Thank
and to see you, Natasha. Yes.
Thank you. And I'm so proud of you. You know, the fact that you have done what you've done with your life, taken on law school, and not only that, but taken on working for other people who are in the situation you were in and making a difference, from trying to get them out to trying to reintegrate them. So I'm happy to have you back.
Thank you very much.
My next guest is Lorenzo Johnson. Lorenzo spent almost 22 years incarcerated for a crime he didn't commit. Wrongfully convicted of a 1995 murder in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, he won release from his life without parole sentence in 2012 after the Third Circuit Federal Court of Appeals ruled there was legally insufficient evidence for his conviction. He remained free for 4 months, after which the U.S. Supreme Court reinstated the conviction, ordered him back to prison to resume the sentence. His defense was not allowed to file briefs or make oral arguments for his position, and he returned to prison on June 14, 2012. With the support of the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, he continued to fight for his freedom, and on July 11, 2017, he was resentenced and released from prison. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You know, for most of us, this sounds like a made-for-television story. You know, it's like we can go ooh and oh and all that and have absolutely no idea what it's like to be convicted of a crime you didn't commit and then put in prison. Like, that's it, done deal. So I'm going to start with you because, you know, Jeff has shared his story, and I invite people to look on my YouTube channel, Natasha Sherman, and there are a couple of interviews with Jeff telling his very compelling story. But let's talk about you right now. So how old were you when you were convicted, accused of, and
22.
convicted? You were 22. And I think I actually said that. But so you were accused of killing someone.
Now, I was accused of being there when it took place.
Oh, of being there when it took place.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, you, according to what I read, your attorney never interviewed you. This was her first capital case?
I was in a capital case's first murder case.
Okay, first murder case. And didn't interview you. And how long did the process take?
It pretty much, it took almost 2 years for me to go to trial, but none of my alibi witnesses was interviewed. None of their witnesses basically was interviewed. It was like shambles.
So you were just basically, you were accused. It took 3 years to get to trial, and basically nobody was doing anything for you.
Nah.
And it was just kind of, let's wait for his trial and then send him off to jail.
As the trial neared, things began to change. And when I say things began to change, it started from the police, and it trickled its way up, not down, to the prosecution office as far as when misconduct was constantly being in play. Like, you know, for example, me having alibi witnesses, one or two of them all of a sudden would change their stories and testified for the prosecution, unbeknownst to me that they had different charges against them that was getting dismissed for their false testimony. So this was starting to take place around me, and I didn't know what was going on. I'm illiterate education-wise at the time, illiterate to the law at the time. So, I'm wondering, like, okay, when I get to court, everything will come out and I'll be set free. But it just kept going, and going. And by the time I got to trial, the motive the case was bound over from the preliminary hearing all changed. The whole theory changed once I got to trial. And
So they lined up all this kind of false evidence,
Yeah.
and they kind of coerced your alibis to change their alibi testimony because they were in
They
front of
could-
the law and they would have something to lose.
in this case right here, they couldn't put me on the scene. One person put me on the scene. I was never there. So my alibi witnesses was crucial to me. And the only way they felt, I guess, is they had a chance of a conviction for me is to have people put me on the scene or have people change their testimony that would have helped me.
Right. Imagine you're sitting there in court and you think that you have these alibis, and all of a sudden you hear them lying.
Vanish. It's cold. It's in situations like that, wrongful convictions, a lot of us don't go to court to be lawyers. It happens to a certain percentage of us. Anybody, like Jeff was wrongfully convicted. He's white, I'm black. It predominantly happened in the urban neighborhoods, but it can happen to anybody. We don't prepare ourselves for what's to come. So when they put their strategic misconduct in play, you're not ready for it. It's like trying to breathe underwater. Like they got unlimited resources, and you don't see it coming.
I think that's the biggest thing. You don't see it coming because you can't prepare for it.
You not only don't see it coming, is if you got an incompetent attorney with you, no disrespect to the public defenders, the court appointed lawyers, because I know some terrific public defenders and court appointed lawyers. But let's put it out there, they're the most underpaid people in the
And
criminal justice
overworked,
system.
and they have a lot of cases.
You got cases where that's a capital case where the Anthony Wright case where his public defender was paid $1,200. And this man is fighting for, he got a death penalty involved in this case. He could get the death penalty. And you mean to tell me that $1,200 is going to secure representation and adequate funds for investigations and things of that nature?
Yeah.
These are all elements of wrongful convictions.
Yeah. So, and it turns out from what I read that after you were released and then went back, and I'd like to talk a little bit about that, you found that there was a lot of withheld information in the police reports. So as someone in the law now, what transpired and how did that happen?
Yeah, it was discovered through an investigation that happened after Lorenzo went back to prison that the sole witness that put him at the scene actually was an alternative suspect, and that information had been withheld from his attorney, and that the motive witness actually had like a familial relationship with the main detective's mother. That was also crucial material that had been withheld from Lorenzo's defense team.
So what does it feel like? You're back in prison and you find out that all of this information was withheld from you.
Now, I found out about, they give you a case discovery before your trial so you could put a sufficient defense on at trial. But in a lot of wrongful conviction situations, they withhold information that can exonerate you or clear you. With the misconduct that we spoke about a minute ago, it was over 200 and some missing pages of my case discovery. Like it started from it started at page 9, I believe. And then it have a couple pages and it jumped 20 pages this way. Then supplements wasn't adding up, page numbers wasn't adding up. So I always knew it was something in there, but they never turned it over. And then they told me it didn't exist. And for long periods of time, I represented myself. So they definitely wasn't going to give it to me. So I didn't have the right representation to go after it. When I was released and I had to return, unfortunately, I had the right support and the supporting cast around me that was going to dig hard for this, and they wasn't going to wait till later on proceedings to get it. They demanding that you turn it over. That's when everything fell in my lap. Basically, what I already knew they had, I didn't know it was going to be a bombshell like this, but I knew it had to be something for them to keep it from me this long. Because if it was something that I couldn't have used, they would have gave it to me a long time ago.
Is it legal to withhold this?
No, it's not. There's a law. It's called Brady, from the case Brady versus Maryland. But they're supposed to turn over all exculpatory material, but they often don't. And the gap in the system is that there's no criminal penalties for when the prosecutors do that, and there's no civil penalties either. I mean, they have immunity.
Then why have the law?
You're right. I agree with you. You're right. But that's why the misconduct is prevalent, because they know that they can get away with it. And to make it even worse, Natasha, is even within the context of a defendant trying to get the wrongful conviction overturned, is not even enough just to show that there was a Brady violation, but then the courts have this additional analysis that they put in. They determine whether or not something has been a harmless error.
Right.
And obviously, if it's harmless, they wouldn't have bothered to engage in it in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's like they really stacked the deck against, defendants.
Timeliness.
So when you first were, and I read somewhere, and I think you wrote, because you write a lot of blogs, yes? Or articles?
Yeah, I write blogs and articles.
Well, on Huffington Post.
So I think I read somewhere where you said where some of the old timers, when you came in, suggested that you get your GED and that you study the law, and you did that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that was really great advice, and also great that you took it.
That's why, off camera we spoke earlier, and we was talking about, it's not all bad people in prison, but you got some people in prison that you don't want a million miles close to your family.
Yeah.
These old timers, I guess they grew to like me because I was consistent about my innocence. So they assisted me in little ways. And that's probably like the best information I could ever get behind the walls as far as get my education. I was gonna do that regardless, but the force, like the push from them, like get your education, and assisted me with they was assisting me with the law when I was lost, because the first book they give you is the Pennsylvania Criminal Rules of Procedures. Now this is a book that probably consists of 3,000 to 4,000 pages. Now somebody that's illiterate, you put a book this big in front of them, they looking at you like, what am I supposed to do with this? And it was like once I achieved my GED and I enrolled in college classes, my brain opened up to a lot of the words, because a lot of the words in law is Latin. So, you wouldn't know without a law dictionary. So if you can't use a regular dictionary, how you going to use a law dictionary? So things came into play, and as I got educated, my eyes opened to what took place with me.
Yeah. Wow. That's really impressive. But so you're in there. Did you actually, when you're in there, believe like, I'm never going to get out?
Nah. I never adopted that attitude. I always knew I would get out. I just didn't know when. That was my whole thing.
You were the same.
Yeah, that's a common characteristic of people who are wrongfully convicted. And if we would have thought the other way, then 95% of the time we would never reemerge.
Right.
You have people that's innocent that went that route, because like I said, it's like trying to breathe underwater. It's like a lot of people bust under that pressure of inside, and they stop fighting, and they give up, and they conform to prison life.
Yeah.
And you would never think that, they was innocent, but they gave up. They don't want to fight no more.
And I think the fact that you engaged and you got educated and you were proactive, but there are a lot of people who are on death row. I interviewed a criminal attorney from California, and he said there are, I think, 747 inmates waiting on death row, most of them people of color, all of them poor. So if you're in prison and you're innocent and you're not educated and you don't get educated, who's going to advocate for you? And you can't advocate for yourself. I mean, it's just, unbelievable.
It's not even, I can't even say that you'll be forgotten because people don't even know.
Yes.
They didn't know about you in the first place.
Yes, yeah. So I want to ask you, so you got out and they said, okay, there wasn't enough evidence. And here you are like, oh my God, free at last. And then 4 months later, they say, oops. What was that like?
That was the second bittersweet pill. It's like it's two
Yeah.
of them. It's
Maybe we can get into a little bit, getting the call from, attorney
you get
Michael
a
Wiseman
call.
and what
I
happened
got a
after
call
that.
from my lead attorney, Michael Wiseman, and I'm at work. I was doing a flag at that time for San Mateo Construction, who I still work for now. He was crying during the call, so it was distorted. So I didn't know what he was talking about in the morning, but only thing I heard was your conviction has been reinstated. That's at the end of the call, like at the end of his sentence, I heard that. So I instantly got numb because I thought like maybe he said something wrong, or I heard it wrong. Then he went on to tell me what took place. United States Supreme Court on May 29th, they made a decision per curiam of reinstating my conviction without allowing my legal team to file briefs or oral argue, normal procedures, all in one day. So I was numb. Like that's any innocent person who got out of prison, their worst nightmare took place with me. Like any is on the
Going
read.
back, I mean, it's like,
Yeah, that the courts would change their mind and you got to go
Yeah.
back. That's the
That's
nightmare
the worst
of all
nightmare.
innocent prisoners.
Any innocent person. You ask them what's their worst nightmare, and they'll tell you if I got to go back. And I was numb. Like I didn't have no feeling.
I can imagine.
You numb because you get flashes in your head what you went through. I did 16 and a half years, so everything is numb. Like I got to start all over again. And as far as legal wise, because you can't argue the issues that you raised up, that got you out. They're over now. The United States Supreme Court is the highest court. Now you got to go back downstairs and start all over again and try to mount up another defense, or mount up some new evidence that show that you're innocent. So it was numb. I was numb. I had called the foundation, Jeff Foundation, and told them what was going on. I had left work, drove down to the Jeffrey Deficit's Foundation, and I just went in the back office and by myself and just, try to gather my thoughts while the lawyers that was there was back and forth with the Pennsylvania lawyers trying to find out what could be done, what happened, like, where we go from here. And it was like I started reaching out to a couple family members, letting them know what took place, but I can't even tell you how I felt. I didn't have no feeling. I was numb. Like,
And within how long did you have after he let you know to then show up?
from May 29th to June 12th.
Okay, so you have 2 weeks to process this and to decide whether you're going to bolt and run.
Exactly.
Let me just say this: that during that intervening period, Lorenzo and I made a number of moves. We tried on a political level. I contacted a number of elected officials I knew. I brought Lorenzo with me up to Albany. We were to participate in a press conference that I was doing in connection with the Innocence Project on wrongful conviction legislation. But I just threw him in front of the cameras, at their press conference, because we were desperate. We're trying to stop him from going back, but all the moves we made, it didn't work. Nobody was willing to do anything, and so in the end, we had to go on this terrible car ride together.
Yeah.
Lorenzo called me up, and one day, and he asked me to do the most difficult thing I've ever had to do in my life. After being exonerated myself, he said, "Jeff, listen, I need you to drive me back to prison, man, because I got no one to take me, and otherwise I'm going to just be going on this lonely ride and taking buses."
Oh my God!
And so I wanted so bad to tell you no, that I can't drive you back to prison or resume a life without parole sentence on a case you were innocent of, but I couldn't, because I couldn't just have you on the buses, and so that ride was, oh my God, that ride was terrible there.
It's like taking someone to, an execution.
Yes.
In a way, you look at it, it was very mentally, like, how can I say it?
Draining?
Nah, that's the understatement.
Yeah.
It was like,
it is.
The show, the mind. Just think about it. You're leaving the confines of your family to voluntarily drive yourself back to a natural life sentence, no parole, like
knowing you were innocent,
knowing
and
you were
knowing
innocent.
that the system failed you already, and now they're saying, "Oops,
go back
and try again."
It was like, I wish it on no one. Like, what I went through, like that day of that drive going back was like, if you ask anybody, like you ask yourself, would you do that? You'd be like, I am not doing that. Like I'm going the other direction. Don't get me wrong. I had them thoughts. I entertained everything.
And what had you not run?
Hmm?
What had you decide to go instead?
Because I was innocent and I had a nice supporting cast around me, and I felt that I had what was needed to win.
Right.
I didn't think that it was going to take this long. You know, I didn't think that certain things was going to turn out the way they turned out. But the ride going back was like, it was surreal because it was like we both was playing different roles at different times.
Half the time I was telling him, look, Renz, it's going to be all right, bro. We're going to get this. We're going to do the investigation's going to take place. We're going to turn this thing around 4 or 5 months. We'll be back in court, and half the time I'm telling him that to comfort him. And then like 5 minutes later, he's telling the same thing to me because now I'm in this. So we're alternating roles. Yeah. And then also it felt crazy what we were doing. We was rotating drivers. Yeah. And then on top of that, people are calling Lorenzo in and up, and like everybody is telling him, "What are you nuts? You're going back where? What? Like turn that car around and go in the opposite direction." So he got a lot of calls like that, and then he's explaining. Half the people don't understand the legal context, so he's trying to educate them really, really quickly. Also,
it was.
Then we had the last, our version of the Last Supper, right? The last lunch, the last meal. Yeah. Just before he turned himself in, it was.
I don't think anyone can imagine it, No.
Yeah.
It's almost like, and this is a horrible thing to say, but it's like people heading to the concentration camps.
Yes.
You know you're getting on the train. Yeah. You have some hope that you might survive, but logic tells you you won't.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And for me, when we're in the parking lot, the prison, I gave Lorenzo money to try to reset himself up back inside, stuff that he would need to help fight the case. The typewriter, creature comfort stuff. You got to get his clothes and stuff for postage and legal copies, and I'm like giving him, I don't know, maybe $500-600, and I'm thinking like after I did that and he gets out the car and walks, I felt so inadequate, like the money what is that going to do for the overall situation, I drove the car out and I pulled over on the side of the road, and it took me like 12 minutes just to get my emotions under control. I felt like I was like abandoning him in this awful looking building with the barbed wire and it didn't help. They put the handcuffs on you. You're outside the building, you're there, and they got to put the handcuffs on to walk to take this. Come on, it was all added to the. It added to the trauma.
What's your feeling as you walk through and those gates close behind you?
It's different because I had to get myself in a mental place. Because when you fighting wrongful convictions, you don't have the luxury to entertain a lot of things. A lot of times you got to be emotionless to a lot of things because the time you're going to entertain that is going to be time away from your fight. So me, myself, I knew what I was up against. So it's like how some fighters say, I got my game face on. You got to lock that mind state in. I'm not coming here to be cordial with you. I'm coming here to sit until my time is up and get out of here. And when I say my time is up, I mean my legal team do what they got to do to prove my innocence, and I'm going to walk back out that door I came in. And that was that. Like, walking back, when I walked in the building, a couple guards was mad, and then some was happy. So I never, I didn't understand what was going on. Then it dawned on me, they had made bets, was I going to show up?
Or not.
And some of them won, some of them lost. So I'm looking at it, and it's sickening to me, like, who does stuff like that in this type of situation? And when I'm walking back in...
It's an inhuman act in an inhuman environment. Yeah,
so I'm being put back in cages, clothes are being taken and thrown away, I went on, let's say this, my brain spiraled for the first week or two. Like, I went in a dark place, like, I came in with the locked-in mind state, but when you getting stuff, you going from a 5-star restaurant, then you getting something slid under the door, slid through the door, and you're not going to have no appetite for that type of stuff. So I went to a dark place for the first 10 days. Like, dark place, real dark. Like, don't want to talk, don't want to eat, trying to find out how did this all happen. But when you're fighting against people who intentionally, maliciously prosecute you and they know you're innocent, it's like you don't have no luxury to take a second off. You must fight, because they're not going to just let you walk out the door.
The other prisoners, they were making fun of you too, right? Some of them, that you even came back. Like, what are you doing back here? How would you say it?
That would be the case, but me myself, I don't have really a tolerance for that, because you're not gonna laugh in my face about me being in prison for something I ain't do. That won't sit kindly with me. So I wasn't the one that could hold my composure on that. But you have people that say, "Well, you crazy? What are you doing back? Look what they did to him. Why would you come back? Well, look what they did to you." So that was taking place. I had people that I knew for 10, 15 years that I was real close with, that me coming back to prison broke our friendship up because they was mad at me from coming back.
And you could get that. I'm going to make a request. We're almost out of time in this half hour, that we continue this. We take a break and then we continue this, because I want to hear more of your story, and I think it's important for people to hear more of your story and what people should be paying attention to. All right?
All right.
My name is Natasha Sherman. Thank you for joining us, and please stay tuned for part 2.